Hi everyone, I'm Shannon. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to show you a time lapse of a yellow rose and oil pastel with a little help from colored pencils for the details. In this particular piece, I'm using two different types of oil pastels. I'm using Caran NeoPastel and Sennelier Oil Pastels. For being the same medium, the Sennelier NeoPastels are actually really different. I find the Sennelier to be incredibly soft. I'm not super familiar with Sennelier. I know they are regarded as the most popular type of oil pastel out there by generally everyone. I'm going to go against the grain here and say that I actually prefer NeoPastels. I find them to be a lot more versatile than Sennelier. They're still really soft and still super fun to work with. But they are firmer, which I actually prefer for the way that I work. I find that they allow a little bit more detail than Sennelier. I also find that NeoPastel allows for a lot more layering than Sennelier, which I really appreciate. So that's why I generally work with NeoPastels. That being said, I decided to use a lot of Sennelier on the petal portion of this artwork because I couldn't resist the colors. Sennelier has 120 different colors versus 96 of the NeoPastel, and their yellow selection was too gorgeous to pass up. So I decided to go out of my comfort zone and use a bit more Sennelier in this piece than I normally do. I usually just like to use Sennelier as a final layer on top of NeoPastel, but in this piece I decided to just go all Sennelier on the petals, and what I quickly found out was that they're so soft, they fill up the tooth of the paper so quick, I wasn't able to layer as much as I usually like, which presented a bit of a challenge. But the more I used them, the more I got used to them, and I think I was able to pull off something decent enough that I'm happy with. The paper that I'm working on is Legion Stonehenge paper. I find it to be a versatile paper. What I like about it so much is that it will take a few layers and it turns the oil pastel into a really beautiful smushy paint almost. And I know that I could probably get more layers out of using a sanded paper, but I can't quite get over the price of sanded papers or how much they eat your oil pastels. To me, it just feels like dollar signs being drained from your pastels and your paper. So I prefer this paper for now. Maybe in the future I'll experiment with sanded papers, but I'm really happy with this for now. You can see that I'm also using some colored pencils in this piece. I am using Caran Luminance Colored Pencils. There's definitely quite a few ways to achieve detail with oil pastels, but since I have colored pencils on hand, that's what I usually like to use. Which sort of leads me to a funny topic and question that's been nagging me a little bit. And I know it's really silly, but if I use colored pencils in my oil pastel pieces, does that make me a mixed media artist? I think the most basic definition of mixed media is using more than one medium. But if you look online, there's definitely a few different definitions. Some art competitions say that it's 3 or more mediums to be mixed media, or maybe that 80% of the piece done in oil pastels with 20% done in colored pencils, that's still a true oil pastel piece. So that kind of led me down a rabbit hole of my thoughts. So when you look at other mediums, like soft pastels have the stick, and they also have pastel pencils, which are super nice for details. Even if you look at watercolor has watercolor pencils, which are very nice for details. But oil pastels, we just get these little nubs, which are super fun, don't get me wrong, but it can be hard for details. And I don't think we're really going to see an oil pastel pencil anytime soon. I think that would be really difficult to achieve, putting this mushy thing inside of a wood casing and then sharpening it like that. But also maybe these manufacturers should just try harder, because it'd be really cool to have an oil pastel pencil. When you think about it, which I clearly have, colored pencils are basically made out of the same thing as oil pastels, just in different quantities. What's an oil pastel? It's oil and wax. What's colored pencil? It's wax and sometimes even oil in the case of the Polychromos brand. So if soft pastels get a pastel pencil and watercolors get a watercolor pencil, then maybe colored pencils could be the adjacent to oil pastels. If they're made out of the same ingredients, just in different quantities, is it truly mixed media then? Furthermore, does it matter? These are the insane thoughts that keep me up at night. I think as artists and humans in general, we can sometimes try to label ourselves too much. Like, you're not a real oil pastel artist if you have to depend on colored pencils for details, which is it's silly. However, I have been thinking about sharpening my oil pastels. It can be done. I have done it. But again, back to the whole dollar sign thing, it's like when you sharpen it, it's like watching dollar signs just fall off of the oil pastel. But I think that by sharpening the oil pastels, you can definitely get a lot of details in with a lot less of the cons of using a colored pencil. With a colored pencil, they're so hard. And so sometimes when you have built up quite a few layers of oil pastels and you take a colored pencil to it, it doesn't lay down very well and it'll scrape up the oil pastel. So I've been thinking about, like I said, sharpening my oil pastels and getting the details that way. When I think about the waste from the shavings from sharpening it, I do have an idea to melt them down into another oil pastel. I don't know if it would work. I've never tried it, but I'm thinking about experimenting with that. So that way there's a lot less waste. So what do you guys think? Does using colored pencils in my oil pastel pieces make my art mixed media? Or am I an exclusively oil pastel purist artist? Let me know what you think in the comments. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Art is supposed to be fun. It doesn't matter if I'm an oil pastel artist or a mixed media artist. I am just an artist. If you make art, you are an artist. It doesn't matter what you use. Art is supposed to be fun. So why make these arbitrary rules for ourselves? Just use the best tool to get the job done and use whatever brings you joy. Now that that's out of the way, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this piece here. This is the first piece that I've ever recorded myself doing, and in total, I had 9 hours of footage, which is a little astonishing. I always knew that I was a little bit slow at art, but I guess I didn't realize how slow, it's fine. Art is a process that is meant to be enjoyed. It's not a race. It doesn't matter how quickly you finish it. What matters is that you enjoyed your time doing it. It is kind of funny though, because I did think that this would be a fairly quick and straightforward process and that it definitely wouldn't take 9 hours to finish, but that's just kind of how it goes. Things always take longer than I expect them to. Maybe someday in time, I'll end up a little more quick, but we'll see. I'm never in a rush to finish any of these projects. As we get to the end of this piece, I do want to mention that you will see me whip out a paintbrush, and that all I'm doing is dipping that paintbrush into Gamsol, which is an odorless mineral spirit. And what that does is thin the oil pastel so it can be smushed around with a paintbrush, just like kind of an oil paint does. And I think that's about all I've got to say for today. So if you made it this far, thanks. That's awesome. As I said earlier, this is the first piece that I've ever recorded, and this will be the very first YouTube video that I've ever done. So I do want to mention that there will be more to come. I am still figuring all of this stuff out, but I do want to do some more content. So if there's anything that you want to see done in the future, please leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. I do plan on pretty soon here getting out a video telling you who I am, what I do, what I'm about, and what some of my plans are here for the future of my YouTube channel. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. That would really help me a lot, and it'll keep you up to date on what I'm going to be doing here. So thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.